Hey everybody, welcome back to the shop that's not the shop. So I thought with this build I'd show that you can make things with a CNC other than plywood projects. Now what we're going to make here is what I'm calling a fancy box with a fancy carving, and we're going to start with maple for the top. Please like and subscribe if you think I've earned it. I hope you get something out of this video. As always, I hope you learned something. I hope it helps somebody in some way. And don't forget our giveaway. We're giving away $75 to a lucky winner in August. We're going to do another giveaway in September. But go to that video, watch the video, and follow the directions. It's a very simple entry process. Enter your name, the month, the year, and you're entered to win. Of course, you've got to be a subscriber. Now what I'm doing here is planing the maple down, but I'm using that third board or fourth board as I guess I'd call it a bridge to prevent snipe on the planer. As I pass the last piece through, I send a sacrificial piece through behind it so that I don't ruin the pieces of wood. Alright, we're going to clamp them up here. And this could have been an outtake because I had a little trouble with the clamps when I started to clamp this down, and about right here I get discouraged and go do something different. But we're back at it. We've got the glue. We got the glue this time. And we're going to tighten them up. Now I'm going to throw a couple of pieces of MDF on the top of here just to elevate the clamp, the third clamp that you'll see me put in, so that I don't stain up that pretty looking maple. Alright, here we got some cedar, and it's ugly. It's ugly for sure, but we're going to send it through the planer, and we'll show you when we're finished planing what the pretty looks like. Man, I wish I could plane them really that fast. But on the last pass, I'll show you how slow a planer truly is. Right about there. And man, look at that cedar pop when you get down to the pretty stuff. Alright, so we're going to set the origin on the CNC to the center of the board, so I do a simple cross there to tell me where it is. Bring the CNC over, change to the different bit. And I got to admit, I cheated a little bit here. I normally would use a flat end mill for a roughing bit. I didn't do that in this case. I used the round nose or round end bit, and we're going to let that do the roughing. Just saves from having to change over. Kind of a crazy pattern. When that started, I thought, what in the world is that thing carving? But you'll see when this is finished, it's a pretty cool pattern. Now, kind of a funny thing, while I'm doing these voiceovers, y'all don't hear this, but that big black dog that we have that helps me in the shop certainly doesn't help the voiceover work. He runs around the house and he's clickety-clacking with them toenails. So we have to stop and start quite often when we've got him in the house helping with voiceover work. Now, I removed the dust collector here so you could see the bit traveling back and forth. And it does make quite a mess. But what a pretty pattern that is. And there you have it. 4 pieces. Those will be the front and back. The short ones will be the sides, obviously. So we'll take some clamps off of our glue up here and pray that it's flat. And I'm not too concerned with that big chunk that's outside that edge there. That's going to get cut off, but in this case I did use a flat end mill to do the roughing. And there he is, the culprit with the toenails. He's never far away from me or the CNC when it's running. Alright, so backety forth and backety forth it'll go. Taking away the rough stuff, and here we change to the round nose. Of 1/4 inch I'm using on this one, a 1/4 inch round nose, and we'll let it do its thing. Obviously I said this is going to be the top, so we put a fancy carving in the top. There it is. Now obviously it's way too big, but we're going to make some changes to that. A little sanding. I reduced the step over quite a bit on this to try and eliminate that, but I really wasn't happy with those edges, so we just sand them up. Now here I'm measuring for the width of the top and the length of the top. And what I did was flipped this piece over and found center. I made a mistake on these and the sides, on this and the sides. I should have generated a crosshair across the entire face of that piece so I knew where center was, because obviously you want the carving in the center. So here I'm doing that. I'm putting the crosshair on the back, and I'm going to transfer these lines to the face of the piece so that I can tell where center is, and then of course we'll divide by 2 so that the panel isn't offset, or the carving isn't offset. And that's what I'm doing, just putting marks there. And that is a Japanese square. You can get those off of the Amazonian. Finding center, dividing by 2, both directions, both sides, draw the lines, and that way it won't look cattywampus, as I like to say. When you're doing something like this and you've spent time carving it out, there's always some anxiety, because if you make a mistake, you get to recarve it. There's no gluing this back together. Now this box is going to have mitered corners. I'll use the Japanese square again to show me where those corners should be when I take it over to the table saw. Now if you don't have one of these digital angle finders, I highly recommend them. And there I reminded myself that you can't rotate that blade with the zero clearance insert in. So we swing this over to 45 degrees. I also made a little goof here too. I should have put the other insert in, because I had to back the blade all the way down to the bottom. Now this is a miter set. You've seen me use these before. I've got these in another video, or this in another video. I'll put a link to this tool in the description. If you want to get the correct angle with your miter gauge, this is the only way to nail it. Not the only way, but it surely is one of the best ways. Put those 2 pins in at the desired angle. I put a little pressure on it to hold it in place. Lock it up, and now I know I have an exact 90 degrees on that miter gauge. And it's just that simple. We put it back away and ready for the next time. Now what I'll do here is I'm making a sacrificial cut to get the majority out of the way, and then I will slide the piece into the blade while it's running so that I can get an exact position for that cutoff. I think they call it creeping up on the cut. I don't know if that's the technical term, but that's what we'll call it here. Alright, we'll swing this back over to 90. We'll change out the red insert for the zero clearance one, and we will be ready to start making these things the correct size. Now it's kind of a general rule when you're cutting off material, you only want maybe 1 tooth above the surface of what you're cutting off, the height. So that's what I'm doing here, lowering the blade so it's not sticking out too high. And we'll begin cutting these off for length and width. The beauty of doing this with the big pieces is it allows me to cut off the bad edges that way. And here we do just a test to see if it's going to come together correctly, and it sure does. A little bit of yellow goop, as I like to call it, and look at those corners. Miter set and a digital angle finder, and you can nail these almost every time. Alright, let's shave down the top and see if we can get that to the right size. Now the one thing I did off camera was I also put a rabbet in the bottom of that box all the way around so that I could put a piece of 1/4" Luan in the bottom. There's the top. Hey, it fits. And there's the Luan. We'll erase this here line we don't need. The beauty of a pencil instead of using a pen when you're woodworking. And here we have my spline jig. Now for those of you that don't know what a spline is, it's a cut through the corner of the box to increase the strength of a mitered corner. I made this out of an old miter gauge and some plywood obviously. There's a 1-inch spacer. We'll clamp that in place. Clamp the block in place, use the spacer for the distance, and I'll use a scrap piece to cut out and make sure I'm deep enough, and that's what it does. Now you set the box in, you run it through, and you just keep flipping it over and rotating it until you get every corner. Now the beauty of the stop block means that I can have my cuts obviously in the same spot, but both top and bottom, evenly spaced. And you'll see what I mean here when I'm finished. I'll show you. There you have it. 1 inch from the top, 1 inch from the bottom. Take some of that maple that I cut off the lid and I'll make it fit in those slots. Trying to force glue in there was a booger, so I used the glue on the end of the little slivers we're going to feed in. And you want them just snug, not too tight that there's no room for the glue, but tight enough that they don't fall out. Here you see me taking the router and cutting the recess for the hinges. Obviously doing that free-handed. We used to make American flags, wooden flags, and I used to cut the stars out by hand. I got a lot of practice cutting out 50 stars on 100 flags. We now have the CNC, we let the CNC do it. Testing there for height, and it's perfect, and I apologize for the camera angle here, but I'm using that chisel to square up the corners. You want to be ever so careful and delicate when you're doing this. Let's see if it fits. Hey, look at that. Alright, we'll use a self-centering bit here for the screws. And if you're paying attention, you'll notice the screws are silver and the hinges are gold. I didn't have any gold screws, I gotta get some. But it works. Now here's my friend in the shop. And you'll notice, when this guy wants attention, he gets it. See him push himself through there, pushes me out of the way. I wouldn't have it any other way, I love that dog. But he is always underfoot. As you can see here running this power saw, it's not a power saw obviously, his nose is right there. I got a little nervous. Could you move? He says no way. So you trim these off as close as you can without hitting the box obviously, and then we'll go back at them with a sander. Now I made a little mistake here too. The distance from the carving to the corner should have been larger. It would have gave me a bigger spline and more room to work. But nonetheless, we're going to get it done here. You smooth them off with a sander until you can't feel a difference between the two wood surfaces. And then it pretties them up. Now, I didn't like that pointed corner, so I'm going to take a Dremel here, and ever so carefully I'm going to grind that back till it matches the carving. It takes a steady hand, a lot of patience, and you have to go extremely slow with it. It wouldn't hurt to have a light too, but I did it without one. We get in there and pick at it with my pocket knife. Anything you can to clean them up. Basically carving with one hand and using the other hand as support to create resistance, to hold that needle of a grinder still. They come out pretty good. I was happy. Here I'm going to add a round over to the top of the lid. I didn't like the sharp corner on it. Straightforward stuff. And we add a little bit of shine to it. I put on 6 coats of this exterior polyurethane. Now there's no reason that I used exterior other than I like the way it sprays on. This particular brand has a special nozzle that spreads the spray in a fan type pattern. It works very well. And it does make it very pretty when it's finished. We cheat with a Lazy Susan there. Here's the lid. Same thing, 6 coats. And bing bang boom, before you know it, we've got ourselves a pretty looking fancy little box. Well, as always, I hope you got something out of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope maybe you learned something from it. Again, if you think I earned it, give me a like, a share, please subscribe. I enjoy reading your comments. And as always, we'll catch you on the next one.